Well, hello everybody and welcome to my show. My name is Jason DaCosta and this is Consistent Preterism. Back at you, coming live. Just cruising around. I'm heading over to Lowe's, pick up a few things, little home improvement projects here and there. You know how it goes. Living in this cursed world. Just wanted to jump on the old horn here real quick. And a gentleman, I think it's a gentleman, it could be a gentlewoman, commented on a video recently and asked about Genesis chapter 12 and was a little bit, I guess, held up by how it says there that all the families of the earth shall be blessed through Abraham. And so what I did is I talked a little bit about, or commented back to the person about how we should understand that Genesis 12 portion in its immediate context, right? Because there was a context. And unlike, many Christians, what I like to do is I like to try to figure out and decipher what the context is before I jump to any conclusions about what the passage means or how it could be relevant to me today. If you try to figure out how the passage is relevant to you today before you put the passage in its proper context, then you end up in a big mess of confusion, and 99% of the time, that person is going to be misinterpreting and misunderstanding said passage. And so Genesis chapter 12, with all the families of the earth being blessed, is one of those passages. It's just highly misunderstood. It's highly misquoted. It's highly misapplied. And people, for some reason, still think that this passage pertains to them today. Now, we're going to read it and go through it a little bit and see what we can come up with, all right? So it says in verse 1, "Now the Lord said to Abraham, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you." So he's telling Abraham to get out of his country and get out of his father's house and go to a land, all right? Land that I will show you. And the word there, the Hebrew word is eretz, E-R-E-T-Z, which literally means just ground, territory, region, land, right? That's all it means. There was no concept of the planet Earth back then, right? The people who wrote this thousands of bazillions of trillions of years ago would have not known that the Earth is what it is like we know of it today. They wouldn't have even had a clue. Right? It's funny, I was listening to a podcast recently on the Camacho Indians, and the whole thing that they went through in their years and their generations and what they did and what they were responsible for, and it was quite interesting. But one of the things that really jumped out and stood out to me was the fact that these Indians living in maybe like the Oklahoma region of the United States had no clue what was going on in Washington, D.C. area, right? They had no clue about what was taking place on that side of the country, right? They were totally oblivious to it. And why was that? Well, because they didn't have any reason or way or means to get over there. They had no communication. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have TVs. They didn't have anything that could really tell them what was going on the other side of the planet, or on the other side of the country, I should say. So just in that regard, we can see how this would be true, right? I mean, and we're only talking, 200 years ago with that. Imagine going back, say, let's just call it 2,500 years ago when Genesis was written, ballpark. Okay, then imagine how little they knew of the world. So you can understand like how narrow focused and laser tight and locally this word was used. And the word there is eretz, and it simply means land, territory, region. Now, clearly, that word eretz is used elsewhere, and it's translated as earth, right? It's translated as earth, like in many of the Noah accounts, where God is flooding the earth, eretz, right? People look at that and they say, look, God flooded the whole planet, flooded it all, killed everything. But really, that's not what the text is saying. The writers had no concept of globe. Again, so the word eretz in that context is simply meaning land, region, territory. God flooded a land, he flooded a region, he flooded a territory. And of course, not being familiar with this and sort of looking at it from a 21st century mindset, we would understand, or we would assume that this is speaking universally of all planet Earth, because we've been taught that way. We've been taught to look at these things as magnificent universal events that took place at the hand of God, right? But really, there's a much better way to do the Bible, and that's to understand it locally, as in contextually, the way that the writer would have intended. And so this word eretz is sometimes used for earth, sometimes it's translated as land. Here it's translated as land. And we can see very clearly that God wasn't telling Abraham to go to the globe that he prepared for him or to go to a planet that he prepared for him. No, that would be stupid, right? But if we took the word eretz in the way that most Christians do when they come to it and say the Noah accounts, as in planet, globe, entire earth, well then we would probably have to say that here in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, because God is telling Abraham, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you, to an eretz that I will show you, to an earth that I will show you, to a globe that I will show you. I mean, come on, you see how ridiculous it is. So the word eretz must be understood as a regional, local land, a territory, a region. All right, and God goes on and he tells Abraham, he says, I will make you a great nation and I will bless you. So he's going to make Abraham a great nation. Now, that has to do with his descendants, his seed, the ones that would come from him, because that's what is going to come down the pike here in the next few chapters of Genesis, when God is telling him that he's going to make him a great nation with many descendants, right? And that kicks off the whole thing, how they laugh and say, but my wife is 90, blah, blah, blah. And the promise ends up coming through where she gives birth, right? And that's how it all kicks off. But the whole make you a great nation is speaking of his descendants. He's making him a great nation. There's no spiritual tone to this whatsoever. Then he goes on, he says, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. All right, now we can see that. That's sort of like a foreshadowing of everything that we see that's going to take place with Israel as we go further on in the story. If you blessed Israel, you were blessed. If you cursed Israel, you were cursed. All right, think of all the times that we see in the Old Testament, in the prophets, where God declares that you messed with the apple of my eye, Israel, so now you're screwed, right? I mean, literally, there's a place, portion of Ezekiel, however many chapters it spans, somewhere in the middle, and that's just one of the places, but this particular place lists many different foreign peoples and lists their judgment at the hands of this God, Yahweh. And the reason why he's judging them is always because of the treatment of the apple of his eye. It says it flat out over and over and over and over and over. Well, you get the point. So he's blessing those who bless Israel. He's cursing those who curse Israel. Right? When it says that I'm going to make you a great nation and bless you and do that, he's speaking of his descendants. And the ones that are going to come into focus here are the Israelites. Not the Chinese, not the Australians, not the Americans, but the Israelites. Those are the descendants to whom the promise was being made. Those were the ones who were going to be blessed and cursed. And here's the passage, verse 3 of Genesis chapter 12, that throws everybody off. Let's read it flowing so you can catch it in its context. I'll start in verse 1 again. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. Okay, so the focus is on a land. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. Here it is. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. All right, now wait a minute. We have to take this and understand it in light of what's being said here. First of all, the context is on this land that God is telling Abraham to go to. He's saying, go to this land that I'm going to show you, and in that land I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. You shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, could this be speaking of the land of Canaan? Yes, it is. right? He's talking about this promised land, this land flowing with milk and honey, as the Bible calls it. This land where there would be great abundance and great blessing, and God would provide for his people. That's exactly what he's showing them, okay? And he's telling them to go there. But notice he says, in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Well, didn't he just say that he would curse those who cursed him? So is that a contradiction? Is that, in one hand, is God saying, I'm going to curse all the people who mess with you, but also all the families are going to be blessed through you? No, it doesn't work. So what is he actually saying when he says, in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed? Well, the problem arises in the word earth there. All right, again, it goes back to our universal mindset, how every time we see this word, earth, it automatically kickstarts something that says universe, everybody, without distinction. But that's not at all what the text is saying. If we look up the Hebrew for this particular word, earth, now, there's a couple words. Like I said, eretz is the most popular, E-R-E-T-Z, and that means land, region, territory. But this word here, earth, is Ademah. A-D-A-M-E-H, I believe it's spelled. Ademah, if I'm pronouncing that right. And guess what its definition is again? Land, ground, territory, region, so on and so forth. Okay, so, wait a minute. On the one hand, he says, Abraham, go to a land that I'm going to show you, and you're going to live there and be blessed. I'm going to make a great nation out of you. In other words, you're going to have many descendants. And immediately after that, he says, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Ademah, land, region, ground, territory. So in other words, and in you all the families of that land that I'm telling you to go to will be blessed. In other words, all the descendants of you that live in that land that I'm telling you about are going to be blessed. Folks, this word earth throws everybody for a loop. It is not saying that all the families of the planet were going to be blessed through Abraham for all eternity. That doesn't even make sense. No Christian would even believe in that. Because if you believe in that, then you have to take a universalist approach, because doesn't all mean all? If you're going to say all families of the earth literally means all families of the earth, then you got to be consistent with it. You can't say all families of the earth means all families of the earth and then exclusify that to only the believers, right? That doesn't work in and of itself. That's a huge problem. So the point here is that the earth, all the families of that earth, and again, earth sucks. It should be land. The same land that he just got done telling Abraham he was going to bless him in and bring him to, Canaan. All the families of that land would be blessed through Abraham. And that's the whole point of the story, folks. The whole point of the story is this promised land that God is bringing them into. And we know the story, how the Israelites eventually come into it, blah, blah, blah. But that's the whole point. Okay, this, all the families of the earth, is not speaking globally. It's speaking of all the families of the land that the focus of this passage is focused on. Let's go on. It says in verse 4, so Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. And they, look at that, the people whom they had acquired. It's like their possessions, right? Such a good God, I guess. But and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. Wait a minute. So we're right. That's exactly the land that God just was talking about. That's exactly the blessed land flowing with milk and honey. Well, if all the families of the land were going to be blessed, and if Canaan was a place where there was great blessing and land and milk and honey and all these metaphorical ways of saying it's an abundant Garden of Eden, it's a paradise, well, don't you understand that that is exactly what the context is on there when it says all families of that land will be blessed? It's on Canaan. Okay, and then it says, so they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. The Canaanites were then in the land, and we know what's going to happen to these poor SOBs, right? They're going to be slaughtered. But it goes on in verse 7, then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. Wait a minute. So, let's see. A few passages earlier, we have this promise. We have this command to go to a land. God tells Abraham that he would make a great nation out of him, and people would be blessed in this land, and all the families of that land would be blessed. And then here, just 3 verses later, it says, Abram, to your descendants I will give this land. So if the connection and the focus is on the land of Canaan, the blessed promised land there, and if he's giving it to Abraham's descendants, then who do you think all the families of the land being blessed pertains to? It pertains to Israel, okay? The ones who were inheriting the land. And he goes on, he says, and there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him, and he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. All right. Let me continue here and see if there's anything else worthwhile in this chapter. No. But the point that I want people to understand here is that this context of all the families of the land being blessed is specifically related to Canaan, the land of Canaan, and God was giving that to a specific people. He was giving that to Abraham's descendants. Not spiritually, you didn't inherit the land of Canaan, right? You're not one of Abraham's descendants. Israel inherited the land of Canaan. The Israelites were called Abraham's seed all throughout the story. That has nothing to do with anyone today. All right? So, again, folks, if anyone uses this passage, as in all the families of the earth shall be blessed, you need to first bop them over the head and say, well, do you really think that they had a concept of globe as we do today? Do you really think that the writer of this, some 2,500 years ago, would have understood the vastness of the planet as we do today, as we understand it today? The answer is absolutely not. Okay, we're talking ancient writings here. All right, so the focus is on a specific region, a specific territory, filled with blessing, filled with promise, and that territory was Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey. And all the families of that land would be blessed. Folks, that's all I got for today. Keep it short and sweet. Try not to bog you down with too much info. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like-a-rooski. If you didn't, take a hike-a-rooski, and we'll catch you on that flip side. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.